I believe the first time you met, you opened with,
you're clearly
normally
in awe.
hate generals.
Yeah.
No, I didn't even say normally. I said, I hate general officers.
He did. And, I thought he was joking, but I did wait at that gate out there for 30 minutes for you to come open it for me when I was coming onto the ranch and you never showed.
I know.
Welcome to the show.
Yeah.
General Clay Hutmacher.
Yeah, thanks. I'm sort of glad to be here.
Sort of glad.
You'll know
how
glad he was after it's over.
Yeah, that's what I need. A bunch of NCOs letting air out of my tire. Thanks, appreciate it.
Golly.
No, we're happy you came. This is going to be super interesting. You have one of the most unique and interesting stories I've heard to date, and I meet a lot of people. I think the biggest thing is you started as a Marine private.
I did, 17 years old. Came out of a foster home, as a matter of fact, and a high school dropout at that.
See, that's when you warmed my heart. I was like, all right.
Well, wait a minute. Before we go too far down, I did graduate from high school later, just FYI.
Well, go right into it.
Yeah.
You joined the Marines when, and then you came,
I did,
you left high school?
January 3rd, 1978. I left for Marine Corps boot camp. I was living in a foster home in Washington State up in Lake Stevens, Washington, and spent 6.5 years in the Marine Corps. Was on the E6 list when I heard about the Army had a flight program, and I applied and inexplicably got picked up for it and showed up at Fort Rucker in June of '84 to attend flight school as a warrant officer candidate. Graduated the following year as a Black Hawk pilot. Went to the 101st, heard about a secret unit out there, and put my name in the hat for that. And they laughed at me and sent me away. Didn't have enough experience. But then, I kept trying, kept going every month, telling them, hey, I'm interested. I want to be here. And then I went to officer candidate school. And when I was there, I called them one more time right before graduation. I was going to the 82nd to fly for the 82nd. And they agreed to assess me. And I stayed there from second lieutenant all the way through lieutenant colonel. Not all in the 160th, but most of it was in the 160th. I flew DAP, the direct action penetrator, an armed MH-60 version. I was actually the first platoon leader. Had a great platoon. Cliff Walcott, who was killed in Somalia in '93. Mike Durant was in my platoon. Several others that were notable in the in Gothic Serpent, which, by the way, the anniversary is tomorrow.
Yes.
Right.
So a significant day in the history of many units in the SOWF community out there. I went down after Desert Storm. I went and flew with the Air Force Special Ops Command as an exchange pilot. Met my wife down there. She's an Air Force intel officer. So the Army remains a subordinate service to the Air Force in my own house to this day. Yeah. Somehow, no matter how senior I got, I was always the 2IC with her, and I haven't cracked the code on that yet.
Well, what made you switch over from warrant? When you did that, was it because you were trying to get into the 160th? You thought that was a better way, or?
And listen, I think warrant officers are the cornerstone of Army aviation. I think, I think they're why we are the proficient force we are. But what I didn't realize as an NCO was that a warrant officer is really a technician. I mean, their whole job is to fly that helicopter. We have warrants that have been flying for 25 years in the same company, basically, in the 160th. I missed, as an NCO, my previous experience, I missed the leadership aspect of it. And I had to make the jump. I was right at the 10-year mark, and you had to be commissioned by the beginning of your 10th year. And I just felt like it was right for me, and I've never regretted it. That's why.
Awesome. So, you went to the 160th, and then shortly after that is when Desert Storm kicked off?
Well, actually, when I got there, we were on an operation called Prime Chance.
What was that?
That was the Persian Gulf when remember Reagan reflagged the Kuwaiti tankers to U.S. The overt name was called Operation Earnest Will.
Right.
And Iran was laying mines in the straits and attacking tankers going in. And so Reagan reflagged all those tankers to U.S. And basically, if you attack that tanker, you're attacking the United States.
Right.
we set up 2 stations. We were actually working off barges that were used to build oil rigs, oil derricks.
Wow.
And we also flew off of frigates as well. But we were protecting those tankers. I wasn't there for this, but there was a significant engagement against the Iran-Jar, which was laying mines. And the requirement was, the ROE was, get up. We had 2 MH6s and 2 AH6s on the team. And the MH6s would get up, come up the fantail and film them laying mines, so we had the evidence. And then the AH6s would engage them until they stopped dropping mines. On this particular incident, they got the footage, got cleared to engage. Well, when the Iranians saw that we were shooting them, they started pushing more mines off, which was probably not the best call for them. So they just kept shooting them until they stopped, and captured several Iranians, kept them for about 48 hours, scuttled the Iran-Jar. If you Google it, you can see a lot of information. So we did that. I did 3 rotations over there, flying off the barge Hercules. Then Panama kicked off. Original name for that was Operation Blue Spoon. It became Just Cause later, but it was Blue Spoon at the time, and flew a 60 down there. And then Desert Storm. I flew DAPs in Desert Storm. Actually, I brought a DAP down to Panama.
Yeah.
But our commander wouldn't let us fly it. And we were, the AH-6 pilots, of course, didn't let that opportunity go by. And they said, oh yeah, DAP. Didn't actually participate or didn't attack Panama. So we only had one of those. So we took a lot of ribbon for that. But then in Desert Storm, we got called over there to go after those Scuds being shot into Israel and to keep Israel from coming into the war and breaking up the coalition. So we based out of Western Saudi Arabia, flying up in what now Al-Qaim area and up there on the western side of Iraq. And did that. And so Desert Storm was good.
Went down in a helicopter in Desert Storm, kind of.
Well, let's just say we had
tough landing.
We bounced. A crew chief, a very dear friend of mine, called out that, check altitude. And I looked at our altitude indicator, and we were 0. We were just on the verge of impacting. And I just had enough time to pull up on the collective, and we hit the ground and powered through it.
Wow.
I couldn't thank that guy enough. I don't want to say his name without his permission, but he saved all of our lives for sure. And we did lose an airplane in similar circumstances a few weeks later.
Really?
Wow. Was it brownout or?
Yeah. I mean, we were, it was, I've never flown in anything like that before. Yeah. I mean, the terrain wasn't horrendous, but 0 light up there. And we didn't have altitude hold or anything. And our nods were, 4 generations ago.
Right.
So it was just we hit these dust storms just like they did in Desert One, which caused all that havoc. I mean, every time we went across the border, I mean, it was, it was some tough sledding for sure.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
So you took us up to your time as an 05.
Well, Desert Storm, I was a lieutenant. Then I went to Air Force from 92 to 96, had a blast, flew out of Hurlburt. And then I went to a classified assignment for a while. And then I came back to the 160th as the XO of 1st Battalion 160th. And right in time when, I was in a different capacity when 9/11 happened, but in 2002, I got back to the 160th. Of course, we were already in Afghanistan, so I started pulling rotations over to Afghanistan, and then we went into Iraq shortly thereafter, and I did multiple rotations in Iraq. And I've lost count, Frank. I've never counted, but I know I've been over there a lot, that's for sure. Yeah. And then commanded 1st Battalion 160th. I actually commanded 5th Battalion 158th in Germany for 2 years, 04 to 06. Commanded 1st and the 160th from 06 to 08. And commanded the 160th Regiment from 8 to 10.
What's 158? Is that a cab?
It's an assault battalion that was based out of Germany.
Okay.
And then where'd you go from there?
I went to the War College. I've been deferred for a couple years.
So this is like right around when you made 06?
Actually, I made 06 in 08, early 08.
Did they know you were a high school dropout when they let you into War College?
Well, I had actually, sort of fixed that by then.
You cleaned up your past.
Yeah, at the risk of being dismissed by Evan. Yeah, I actually went back and I will. There's a funny story about that. I was a Marine over in Okinawa, and I went to Los Angeles Community College overseas to get my high school diploma.
Wow.
And I did pretty well, and the base chaplains there at Camp Schwab, Okinawa, for the Marines out there, they probably know that name. They said, "Hey, are you planning to continue your education?" And and I said, "Yeah, I was a E3, a Lance Corporal or something." I said, "Yeah, I absolutely am." They said, "Well, here's a $50 scholarship for you to continue," which I promptly went out in town and drank away with my buddies. But yeah, then I just started going to college at night and incrementally working towards a degree after that.
And then get to War College.
Yeah, I did War College 10 to 11. I went to Afghanistan and stood up the Afghan Special Mission Wing, which was really interesting work. I was on now defunct Camp Eggers down there in Kabul, and basically built it. It was just to move around their commandos and Afghan Special Forces. A combined fleet of fixed-wing ISR aircraft and Mi-17 rotary wing. Interesting, the Mi-17s weren't very popular with the Department of Defense because it's clearly not an American-made aircraft. But we were under the gun. We thought we were leaving in 14. That was the truth at the time.
Right.
So we didn't have time to go with an American-made airplane and retool all their logistics systems and all of that. I came back from there. I commanded the Army Special Operations Aviation Command from 2012 to 2014. And then I went to Korea. I was the Deputy Commanding General, 2nd Infantry Division from 14 to 15. Great job. Loved it. And then came back. I was a Deputy Commanding General. I made 2-star. I was a Deputy Commanding General of U.S. Army Special Ops Command, USASOC, for a couple of years. And then wrapped up my career as the J3 at U.S. SOCOM, got out in 18, and then took over the Special Ops Warrior Foundation from the very capable Vice Admiral, retired Joe McGuire.
That's quite the career.
Yeah, being a general was never the plan, that's for sure. I was ecstatic when
that's
I made.
That's what I mean. Yeah. You're a Marine.
When I made E5, I was like totally stoked on that. I was like, wow. I mean, I am somebody. So
I've got power.
That's right.
I've got leadership.
Yeah.
No shit.
And you could make the argument I probably had more authority as a Marine E5 than I did as a 2-star.
Man, I don't even know where to begin on this because there's so much here from high school dropout
pick
to
a spot in the timeline.
I know.
Yeah.
That's why.
I think it's just interesting. I think we could start just like peeling the onion a little bit in the sense of, where do you guys in your think tanks of like general officer think tanks, where do you guys come up with names for operations?
That's a good question. I thought they were computer generated. Now the initial ones, like Blue Spoon, was a computer generated. Now when the politicians,
it's just a computer generated thing.
Yeah, that's my understanding. Yeah, and now I mean it depends. The Brits did them different. Like they had a line of targets in Iraq that were all insect. I don't know. I mean that gives you some insight.
I know back in 2007, there were 2 captains working at MNCI, and that was their whole job, was to come up with operation names.
Oh,
yeah.
If I could have gotten that job, right? Like I would have stayed forever.
That's probably why it's 2 captains.
Blue
and not
Llama.
I don't think you'd be a good fit for that.
Yeah, like I would have loved that job.
Yeah, I don't think they would stand the political test of time with you in that seat, frankly.
I don't know, because I feel like that's what I do with the exclusive coffee subscription. Every month is I come up with operation.
That's exactly how
seriously.
Lava Panther.
Lava Panther. That's exactly what I'm doing. You guys know that. Like Power Llama, Lava Panther, Flying Elk, like all these things are like they are operational names. Like I think they are.
Yeah.
But I was
it's always
wondering.
good to have a backup, right? So if
Yeah.
things don't go well, you can always,
That could be
I
my
would
new
recommend
thing.
you for being a contractor to do that.
I would take that job now today if they said you could do this.
You need to do it on a letterhead.
I would
Your
make
retired letterhead.
the branding on these ops would be way better too.
Yes.
Like we could sell
Oh, yeah.
stickers and T-shirts
get the
and
art
like get
department
this
in
thing
there.
monetized the right
Yeah.
way, where it's like
Guys would have tattoos.
Operation Blue Llama. I would be trying to lobby people to go and do more war just so I could make more shit. You know what I mean?
You'd be part of the industrial military complex.
That would be, I would be the only part of it.
Right.
But you would only advocate for small things.
No, super, we call low
We're not-
intensity conflict.
So
yeah.
what would you call thermonuclear war? What would your name be for that?
A really big mistake. A really big
Yeah, I
fucking
don't-
mistake.
Operation Screwdriver.
Operation, we're all fucked. Operation Populate Mars. Because
That's a good point of departure. You probably might want to buff that one a little bit before we send it up to the chairman.
How many hours do you have behind a helicopter stick?
About 3,400 or so. About a third of that is MVG time.
So 1/3 of, so over 1,000 is on NVGs.
Yeah, under
Wow,
nods. And
jeez.
probably 400 or 500 of that is combat. I will say that is, we've got a lot of guys in the 160th that have much more than that.
Yeah.
They have, over 1,000 hours of night vision goggle combat time,
Right.
which is, you would have never seen that. When I started flying nods, if you had 100 hours of night vision time, I mean, you were a grizzled veteran.
Really?
Really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we were flying what we call PVS 5s, if you can go back
Right.
in your memory with those. And the 160, they actually cut away the bottom so you could see out from underneath them. Before you
Right.
couldn't see anything. You had to take one tube and twist them in to try to see what your instrument said. I mean, it was a recipe for disaster.
Mhm.
What were they using in Iran during the when was it Desert One?
Desert One.
Yeah, what were they using for NVGs?
I
there?
believe, I know maybe PVS 5s, full
Right.
face PVS 5s.
Right.
I know that they had to go with a full moon for that mission because they could
Got it.
not, there was no way they could safely execute it
Right.
under a zero lume. You contrast that with us, we prefer to fly in zero lume.
Right.
I mean, it's harder, but
Right.
it's, it's
Yeah,
better
but now
protection for
technology
the
lets you
aircraft.
do it.
Enemy can't see you.
So when was the shift or when was the technology really good enough where you could shift most of your focus in combat flying to the evening? Like what years do you think that was?
Well, I think that, and again, some of this is speculation on
Right,
my
sure.
part, but educated guess for sure. I think after Grenada,
Mm-hmm.
the 160 was already stood up to be a night vision goggle or a night flying unit
Night
after
stalkers.
Desert One, right? When they saw
Right.
that Desert One didn't
Yeah.
work out, they had to have, But I think it really got driven home and there became a lot of momentum behind it after Grenada because they weren't allowed to attack at night.
Was that 83, 84?
83. I was in
83?
the Marines. I know
Yeah.
I was over on the Rock. I was in Okinawa at the time. But they, they hit that prison, which was a disaster.
Mhm.
In daylight, and the Navy.
That was the Marine Corps, wasn't it?
The Marine Corps they were there I think it was on the Guam, but the Navy was command and controlling that operation. The 160th came in.
Oh, the Rangers
Right.
jumped into that.
Rangers jumped
Yeah.
into Point Salinas, I believe,
Yeah.
if I remember right, in Grenada. 160th came down, and they executed several operations, but one of them was a prison, and they got driven off by ground fire. We lost an airplane. Captain Keith Lucas was killed. The whole right side of the cockpit was shot out by a ZPU-4.
Yeah, because Clint Eastwood did that documentary on that.
He did.
Heartbreak Ridge.
Heartbreak
Heartbreak
Ridge.
Ridge.
Yeah, good
That
documentary.
was a good documentary.
Really shows what recon Marines are like.
Yeah.
Recon kicks butt.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, that's what I learned.
So I've heard.
No, sorry, Clay. It's hard for
But
me
we
to stay
digress,
serious. Yeah. I was interested in that because where the Army really shifted their focus, 83, because by the time they went from Desert One and then Panama, it seemed like that was a completely different type of, you could do a full scale aviation assault in a city
at night.
At night.
Yeah. 0100. I was there. 0100 was HR. 27 separate assaults on key targets.
Right.
I mean, to me, that was a significant demonstration of the capability that now existed in the U.S. military. And it wasn't just, I mean, it was led by Special Ops. They were the main effort, but the 82nd was there.
Yeah.
I mean, and our night vision capability has only increased and proficiency has only increased from there.
Yeah.
Right. Well, especially over the last 2 decades. I mean, considering what we've done in the last
20 years,
20 years in aviation alone, just the level of proficiency at night.
Yeah.
I would imagine there's zero ability for any other country in the world to have that type of proficiency, nor to even catch up to the experience-based knowledge. It's not as if the Chinese could start spinning stuff up and flying guys at night that fast.
Well, and then, and we can't discount is air refueling capability, which the Air Force had it first in their rescue fleet. But the 160th developed the capability with the help of Air Force Special Ops Command. I was down there at the time, and our initial pilots on the 60 side got qualified by the Air Force. But if you think of, here's a great example of that. If you look at Desert One, they took off of a carrier, the Nimitz. They flew, a long distance, and the mission ended in failure at the first FARP site. Right? Desert One.
Yep.
Because they were going on to the Hyde site, to RON, remain overnight to execute the next day.
Yep.
So now flash forward right after 9/11.
No. Sports.
SOWF executes a mission of even greater distances off of an aircraft carrier, eerily or similar, and executed it flawlessly on 2 separate targets. Rhino and Gecko were the 2 main targets that night. When people would ask me as a 160th, are you guys worth it? I said, you tell me.
Here's what
we couldn't do in 1980.
Right.
And here's what we did after 9/11. I would say that no other country in the world could have executed that mission. And I don't think that's even arguable.
Yeah, there's no way I think that I think anybody could clearly articulate another country had that capability. There's no way.
No.
Now, from 1980 in Desert One until 89, I guess in Panama, 160th was that. It was born out of Desert One. Is that correct?
It was. So the Holloway Commission was stood up after that failure. In fact,
what was the failure? Like,
the failure was that there was, after we failed at Desert One, right, when the helicopter was.
I don't know the mission.
So the mission, Eagle Claw, was the rescue of the 52 Americans from Tehran, and at the refueling site, the helicopter was repositioning behind the 130, and it browned out. And crashed into it, and that's where we lost 8 Americans, 3 Marines and 5 Air Force. When that happened,
because they also had the fuel blivets in the back, right? Because
which
that's
caused
why
a fire.
And in addition to that, weren't there also at least one helo turned back, right?
More than that. More than that.
Yeah.
They were down when they landed. They took off with 2 extra. I think min force for them to go forward for the rescue was 6.
Right.
They had an hydraulic pump failure on one of the aircraft at Desert One, and then they went to 5. And Charlie Beckwith made the call. He said, "Hey, min force."
Right.
That's always a controversial thing. You always make the min force decision, whatever it is, when it's not an emotional issue, but when you look at the numbers. And Charlie Beckwith said, we don't have the forces we need. We can't mass enough combat power on the objective. And he made the decision to abort with the intention of trying it again.
Right.
But the bottom line is the Holloway, and Admiral Holloway was the head of that, commissioned to stand up and look at that mission and look at and analyze the failures and make the fixes to make sure that never happened again. So as a result of that, the 160th, they said on the helicopter side, you can't do this with overall, but the helicopters were obviously an area of focus because of what happened. So they said, you can't do this as a pickup game, right? You can't do a complex mission like that. And when you think about it, going into a country's capital like that with a pickup team, it's got to be a standing force. That was one of the conclusions. So JSOC was stood up as a result of that. The 160th Task Force 160 is what it was back then, was stood up. SOCOM was stood up. And the Nunn-Cohen Amendment on Goldwater Nichols, which came in right after that, gave SOCOM a checkbook, which was very unique back then.
Right.
And so they have service-like capabilities to train, field, and equip, but they have operational or train, field, and equip authorities, but then operational authorities as well, which make that a very unique command. But all of that came out of that Holloway Commission. And so so it started there, right? It started because once you put focus on a problem, you're going to get results.
Right.
And that's what happened. They started training for it. They initially started training for a second rescue attempt.
Right.
Which was Operation Rice Bowl, I believe is what the check. And they should have consulted you on that.
They should have. I wasn't.
It could have been Blue Llama. I mean, I could see Blue Llama.
Yeah. I wasn't born.
Well,
I was.
Okay. Thanks for that. I appreciate it. But that, that's the capability. And
those were 53s?
53s, yeah. They were Navy 53s. They were minesweepers.
Now, I remember, and I can't remember where I read this. This was years ago. So I just checked my facts if my memory is correct. So the first time we had really flown under NVGs in preparation for some type of rotary wing insertion was in preparation for that. Is that correct?
I can't, I suspect that is the case.
Right.
But I can't tell you 100%.
Because inside Delta Force, it's been a long time since I've read that. Did you read that? It had to have read. It's like a
that was the
novel.
book that Haney wrote.
No, was it Haney or was it Beckwith? I think it was Beckwith.
Yeah, I read Beckwith's book, but it was
Didn't
a long
he go
time
into
ago.
that on the preparation for Eagle Claw? And then they were talking about they really hadn't done some of these things before, or they hadn't done them, or at least they hadn't done them since Vietnam at any point of proficiency. Right. So he was building some of these proficiency points from zero, and he was pulling in guys that had, anyone that had experience basically in some of these categories, they were like put on the team basically. Yeah.
Well, you look at it. So the Air Force actually had a capability in Vietnam, but it was stood down after Vietnam.
Right.
Because the you think, hindsight's 20/20 here, but Navy helicopters flown by Marines with some Air Force guys sprinkled through there.
So everybody could get their credit.
Well, I think that, the thought process was that, Marines are probably better suited than Air Force. And I'm not saying that's correct, but I don't, I'm speculating here, but they didn't have the because that question's been asked many times. Why didn't we use the Pavlos? We had them.
Right.
But they had lost that capability. It had atrophied because no one put any resources against it.
And was Delta already a thing, or was that a Blue Light Charlie Beckwith type of scenario?
Again, I wasn't in the community then, but when I read Beckwith's book, my recollection was that they had already completed their RTEP type of thing, and they were validation exercise, and they were operational by then. Blue Light had already went away.
Got it. So now we got the timelines right on that, and flying with NVGs, and then you have 1,000+ hours and just under NVGs. Do you still fly?
Not really. I mean, if I get an opportunity, I'll wiggle the sticks. The hardest part is figuring out how to start the damn thing because they all started different. So, once I do, hey, if you started for me, I'm pretty sure I can get it off the ground anymore safely. What's that?
They're not a flip phone anymore.
Yeah.
Do you miss it? Do you miss flying?
Sometimes, but I'm of the mind that you can't ever turn back the clock on things like that. It's like when I left command of the 160, it was a great time of my life, very formative for me. But I I didn't pine away for it afterwards because it was the next guy's turn. It wasn't,
Right.
and I was just honored to have had the opportunity. So I do miss flying a little bit. Once in a while I'll get an opportunity. I flew a Bell 206 L3 a couple of months ago. That was fun. Went around the pattern, but I mean, I have my time and it's a young man's game, right? Especially flying. I did some, when I was a commander of 160, I flew AH-6s.
Oh, wow.
And,
So
and that's some hard slog, especially in the winter, because you never fly with a door. And of course, the warrant officers being warrant officers would put me in the left seat. So my hand holding the collective on the left seat was out into the slipstream.
Right.
And I'll never, of course they said, well, hey, sir, you can fly with us, but we're going to be on the range this night. This is the night you got to fly. And it was like 32 degrees. And I'm out there. And by the time I got home, I mean, I was like a bowl of jelly, curled up in a fetal position, shaking like a leaf. I mean,
it doesn't get any better when it's 110.
Well, they say that you measure your time in little birds by the winters because they're not any fun to fly.
I remember flying around Baghdad at 100 feet AGL and those things, and I thought it was so cool. I just thought it was like a hairdryer.
Yeah.
Oh, it is. Yeah. That's why we went to those Army combat shirts. I got special authority when I was especially daylight, right? In August, and it's like 115 and you got to wear all that stuff. So we went to those t-shirts and the Army actually developed a Nomex kind of shirt for us to wear.
Yeah, I have a funny story with that because they had shipped those first AC Army Army combat shirts.
ACS, Army combat shirt.
The Air Force guys sent them out with a package to me. And I came in the talk with it. And it's the first time anybody had seen t-shirt material with ACU sleeves. And the S3 looks at me and goes, what the fuck are you wearing?
Right.
I'm like, I don't know. This seems like a pretty genius invention, seeing how we're always wearing body armor. You're like, it looks stupid as fuck and it's never going to take on. Like,
I beg to differ, sir.
I don't know. I mean, this seems pretty legit.
Yeah. If you got out of the talk, maybe you'd have a different opinion on that.
So you're really one of the only guys that I know that I've talked to that has been in all of these different theaters through the last several decades.
30 years. Every war.
Right? Every war.
Enlisted warrant and officer.
He
did everything. The only thing he didn't do was go on submarines.
Yeah, and no desire.
I was waiting for you to jump out. Well, actually,
I was on a submarine.
We've landed on them on the deck, dropping SF guys off and SEALs. But it was just a drive-by.
Did you like the AH-1 or the DAPS better for
AH-6
for roughing things up?
Well, so I like them both, and they both have unique capabilities. So the reason the DAP was created is the max airspeed on the AH-6s and the MH-6s at the time. In the MH-6 is the assault version with the planks on the side, and the AH-6 obviously is an attack version.
Right.
Same basic airframe, but some different avionics and the like. Is that when you're escorting, so they're 80 knot is the max airspeed.
And you're two miniguns, two tubes.
So you can do different configurations. They can do 2 miniguns, and 2 7-shot pods, 2.75s. They call that a duals configuration. And then they have a trips configuration, which is a rocket pod, a mini, and then a 50, a GCAL 50, a GAL 19. And we use those against vehicles when you want a little extra range on especially in daylight. Those come in handy. So that's the 2 different configurations they have. But the limitation on the AH-6 is airspeed. So if you got the cruise speed at the time of the 47s and the 60s was 120 knots. So you got an escort platform that can go 80. So you've mitigated a third of their airspeed.
Right.
And so the DAP was created to cover that gap in mission capability.
Why isn't you guys never put the Apaches in the 160?
Well, we looked hard at the Apaches. And I was actually, not involved in that, but we did a hard look at them. And you're right. So from first blush, you would say, why wouldn't we do that?
Right.
But one, we had our air transportability on an Apache is very, very limited. So we had a set package a rapid deployment package that we had where the 60s fit in well with that on the load plans and all of that kind of stuff. And Apache don't. I mean, it takes much longer to build it up. The other thing is the avionics and all of the communication suites in there would have to be upgraded. A lot of money. The final reason is if we're on the alert package with a DAP, it can either be an attack aircraft or you can quickly reconfigure it to an assault aircraft, which you cannot do that with an Apache. Mm-hmm. The capabilities of an Apache, especially the new E model that they have, are undeniable. It's the most capable attack helicopter in the world, in my humble opinion. But it just wasn't a good fit for us. We looked hard at it.
No, it makes sense now.
There's another limitation in there too. I just remember from being in 18 Delta and calling in medevacs, I'd be sitting there with my casually wondering what's taking so long. And, the medevac bird spins up in no time at all, but the Apache Escort takes 15 to 30 minutes or something like that to spin up. It was something ridiculous, and I've never forgot that.
Yeah, but why? Why does it take longer?
Well, I mean, one, I think it really is a chain of command thing, and some of it is, what's the risk approval authority on it? They want to look at the mission.
Right.
You touched on something, Tyr, that we developed in the 160th, which was an internal CASEVAC capability. Mm. My experience when you're going on high risk targets, which most of them are that we're hitting, is that if we didn't want to rely on medevac.
Yeah.
And the reason is they weren't briefed on the mission. The flash to bang from the time they're notified. And I'm not saying these aren't brave air crews and they're not committed to their mission. My first tour was a medevac pilot in the 101st. But we approached it different. So we took one of our assault birds. We had our own medics, which were SOCM trained medics that went through the 18 Delta portion of the Q course. And they went through a pretty extensive internal validation program over a year before we'd let them go out. And we'd put those guys with their kit on one of the assault birds. So if you think about it, we go in on the target. They're carrying operators. They put them out. They take a heightened, once the infill's complete and go to our ground logger, air logger, they have on the ground logger, they have a heightened state of alert. So if we get a wounded eagle on the target, you've got a crew that's already been there before, that's already familiar with our SOPs, and we get in and out quickly.
On the freaks.
Right. They got the SA on the whole target. If you got a medevac bird coming in, you got to brief them up, and then you got to clear the airspace for them to come in.
Right. Well, that makes too much sense. So who was the NCO that came up with that? That doesn't sound like some officer shit to me.
Ouch. Yeah. I'm going to have to go buy a puppy to get my self-esteem back when I get done with this. It does make a lot of sense. I've pitched it to the aviation branch several times. And I'm not saying that we don't need medevac, because you still need medevac. You got a lot of ground operations.
Yeah.
But for these high-risk assaults, in convoys, you need them for, route clearance teams and convoys. You got to have that area coverage.
Why don't you guys have a company inside the 160th that is just dedicated to medevac?
Well, we didn't need it because the kit would go onto the back of any aircraft. Really, for the pilots, every pilot knows where every medical facility is. As part of our pre-mission planning, and what role capability they have, and where we need to go. And then that medic, wherever it makes sense, he goes in. He clips he's got different kit in a 47. And different kit for a 60, and it just clips onto the back bulkhead on a 60, and then on the side of a 47. And there was some selling on the ground force side for that, because you take up the space of really with the kit and that guy, 2 operators on that bird. So there is a combat power trade-off.
Right.
But I would tell you that we've saved a lot of lives on that critical time from when you're HLZ to get into a cache. That interim care is important. And, a perfect example of that is a dear friend of mine, Matt Waters, 2nd Ranger Battalion, June 11th, 2003 on Operation Reindeer. I was Air Mission Commander. He was a team leader in B275, took an RPG below the knee. It took a while to get him packaged and prepped into the HLZ. And we came in there with a 47, and I mean, the guy almost died 2 or 3 times getting him to the cache. But that medic saved his life. And he's a cop in Tacoma now with 3 kids.
Wow.
And a great, great guy. And
Arguably a more dangerous mission.
yes. Yeah. I think certainly a more frustrating mission.
More frustrating, definitely. Yeah.
Right.
But I'm a big fan of the capability, and this isn't parochialism. It's just,
Right.
hey, effectiveness. We owe our ground forces, that level of support. What I've seen is that, other units docs will come in and say, if it's a big mission, it's a high vis mission. Well, hey, I gotta be in there. No, man, there's a special skill set to start an IV in the back of an aircraft that's jinking around in pitch black. And I don't care if you're ER master,
Ninja.
blaster, you don't have that skill set.
That used to be how I would initiate people, whether they were new to the team or if I had another medic come out that was, because I had Navy corpsmen that would augment me and things like that, or just regular leg medics from whatever fire base was that wasn't getting rocketed at the time. They'd come out and want to play with me because they heard my medevac calls. We were busy, so I would take them out in the back of a Land Cruiser and bounce around the poppy field and tell them to start IV under NVG.
I had all the respect, and we saved a bunch of dogs too, in the process, which, is an emotional event in and of itself, losing a teammate like that. So I'm a big fan of the capability. I think there's growth potential there. And I do a lot of professional development. I'm with the SOWF community on some lessons learned for some friendly fire incidents. I'm doing it up at 2nd Battalion, 5th Group later this month. And that's one of the things I brief them on is, hey, understand this capability and integrate it into your training plans.
Oh, wow.
My buddy's taking over 2nd Battalion. He's going to be the commander over there.
Oh,
I do have officer friends. Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
I mean,
He's a nice guy.
Do they like you or?
No.
Oh. I'm shocked. Yeah, Ken Wainwright used to be my XO. He's the commander 2-5 right now. Great guy.
So what is something when you came back and commanded the 160th, what was something that you wanted to implement or change, like once you were in charge and the gavel was handed to you?
Yeah.
Did you rewrite their ethos so you have pronouns? Pronouns?
Well, the first thing I did was go through the ranks and clear out all the irreverent NCOs. That was job one. And then followed by shortly thereafter the warrant officers, which were
you did like trolling those warrant officers.
Yeah. Well, listen, I would tell them, hey, I'm a former warrant. I feel completely empowered to let the air out of your tires at will. In fact, I believe they should. I told them this many times. You guys should all be restricted to live in a house trailers for the rest of your life. Which some thought was funny. Most didn't.
I think it's hilarious.
Yeah, well, shocker there again.
Did you
right?
change some parking signs or something?
Actually, I do have a parking sign story.
Yeah, that parking sign story is super funny.
Yeah, and I know the AH6 guys will appreciate that when I share it. But you know what? It was interesting. I took over from a great officer who's a dear friend of mine, Lieutenant General retired Kevin Mangum, and we knew each other. He was he grew up in the 160th. And he had, every commander has their priorities, right? And I think they're important. They may not seem important down at, where the rubber meets the road, but as far as keeping the unit focused and where resources are going, I think are important. And it was win the fight, modernize the fleet, and transform the regiment were his 3 priorities. And I agree with all of those. Those were clearly important priorities, but I added the number 1 priority is leader development and professionalize the force. And it can't be just at the top, right? You can't focus like as the commander, my span of control was my battalion commanders, my staff. Mm-hmm. It had to be in the depth and breadth of the organization. So when we do our training briefs, everybody had responsibility. The first sergeant had responsibility of a company, had responsibility for his E5s and E6s, and And the warrants, the company commander had responsibility for developing his warrants. And I wanted to see what they were doing. And so every brief I'd say, okay, how are you, this is part of the brief to me. And then I had my own plan for the battalion commanders and the company commanders, mainly the company commanders. Because I believe if you get leader development right, you need to have the right culture in the command, that all those other things, the modern, winning the fight, modernizing the fleet, and transfer, all that will take care of itself. If you got the right people in the critical spots with the right skill sets.
What was the third one? Win the fight, modernize the force, and what?
And transform the regiment.
What's that mean? What's transform mean?
So, as fact of life changes occur, are we best postured for, and I'll give you a perfect example of that. The 160th now has 2 Gray Eagle companies, which are a Pred equivalent, right? The Army's version of the Predator.
Got it.
In their ranks. So they've got, I think it's 12.
Are they armed?
Oh yeah.
Oh wow.
They're 12. Oh yeah.
I didn't.
In fact, and I believe this to be true, and I've heard it from multiple sources, but I'm at about 95%. At least a couple years ago, the most lethal platoon in the Army was our Gray Eagle platoon.
Wow.
To Iraq. The most lethal platoon in the Army.
That doesn't surprise me.
Well, if you don't think I wore out the AH-6 guys on that,
right?
Because it was, Spec 4 Umpty Frats was slaying them, and crushing it. But that's what
in between the dings on the microwave from his burritos, he's just like,
sounds like a great job.
Ding! I gotta take a break. Hold on.
Everybody's got to eat, man. Everybody's got to eat. But that's an example of being relevant, and that wasn't without controversy. In the 160th. The guy, why we're an aviation unit. Why are we doing this? And my response to them was, we're doing this because this is what best serves the ground force commander.
And keeping it all in control. Why would you?
Yeah.
It's just not adding more shit to this, because I know how complex this looks from an air picture standpoint when you're inside one of these RASs.
Right.
And the more that you guys have coming from the same place that understand the same things, the easier it is. Not trying to argue with
a RAS.
Yeah. Restricted operating zone.
So, and there's an ACA, which helicopters operate at will, because ACA is called Airspace Coordinating Altitude. So usually at 1,000 feet or below,
3.
Depend. I think, but okay, we'll use 3. That's there is no coordination below that. Yeah, the airspace stops, but above that, it's tiered. So if you go on a standard target, you're going to have a stack of assets up there, depending on the target.
Right.
And those have got to be deconflicted. Yeah. And that's an Air Force mission, and they do it. The Army doesn't do that well. Yeah. But the Air Force does it exceptionally well.
Yeah, the 24th, now 724th SOW is the JTAC support for them.
And I would tell you that, and I've gotten some criticism for this over the years, but in my mind, and it's oversimplifying it, the only reason the 160th exists is to support that operator on the ground. And I don't care what service they're from. I don't care if it's Ronald McDonald going down the ropes in the back. He's our focus, and we are never going to leave him, and we're going to be completely focused on them. And I actually was very much focused on recruiting former SF and former Rangers that went through the warrant program, even if they were younger, because their empathy and understanding of the situation on the ground was something, part of that professionalizing the force that you can't replicate.
I flew with a couple guys that were former long tabbers, and
lots of them.
You could tell.
Lots of Marines that get out and come over. I remember I walked into 2nd Battalion, our Chinook Battalion. Now they're 2nd, 3rd, and 4th are all mirrored. They're 60-47 mix. Every warrant officer, I was surprised, one, to see so many of them at work at once.
You got that one in there.
But every one of them had a Ranger scroll on his right sleeve. Every single one of them.
That's super cool.
It was. I mean, and to me, that was really critical for us, right? Yeah. That unit culture eats strategy for lunch every time. We had to have that right ground focused culture, and I beat the drum on it the entire time I was in command, and still do.
When you just said because that's the will of the GFC, the Ground Force Commander, and just talking about how keeping 160th in there, mission focused on supporting the guy on the ground rather than independently supporting the 160th. That's so key. And it's not just thanks, brother. That's not key just to 160th or even SOF in general. I see that a lot. I mean, I've done my staff time. I've had the staph infection, and you see people starting to create missions. And Evan and I have talked about this just in kind of organizational development at Black Rifle Coffee. You see people start to develop
little fiefdoms.
Their little fiefdoms, their organization, and it starts to take on a mission, a self-supporting mission, rather than just staying focused on why do we exist in the first place.
And that's why strategy is so important, right? A strategic, like when I took over the foundation that I'm running now, you know, I said, hey, show me our strategic plan. What are our priorities? What are our strategic objectives? You know, because you have to anchor the organization in that.
Well, and it's so important. And that was the thing that we're you know, being more of a passenger on the ride of the strategic planning and objectives for the last several decades. It would frustrate the shit out of me. You'd have guys that couldn't clearly articulate what it was that they're trying to accomplish, you know, what their mission success criteria would be, you know, and, you know, I don't consider myself a smart guy. I just consider myself a guy that needs very specific goals, objectives directly associated with the big picture. It's because now I can put it together and go, oh, okay, I got it.
Right. Yeah.
And
how you're contributing to the overall effort.
And it helps you stay in your lane because you're like, oh, I get it. I completely understand what the global war on terror, you know, our strategic objectives are. We have to deny sanctuary, blah, 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 blah. I see where I fit in this. So if I'm in, you know, Libya, I understand how I'm contributing to the overall international strategic objective, right? I understand it. It's not like, what the fuck are we doing training guys here? This is fucking stupid. And it's like, no, you're stupid. You don't fucking understand what we're doing because you're not digesting the information.
You gotta zoom out past your ego.
Yeah. But I think as I get more caffeinated and get my brain warmed up here, you know, it leads into organizational success. As you look at all the different places that you've been, now leading a nonprofit, you know, how many years do you have in the military?
I was a month shy of 41 when I retired.
Jeez Louise.
That's two careers.
Yeah. My wife is quick to remind me that I was working for free at the end there.
Right.
I had 100% of my base pay was coming to me.
Well, it's really interesting to me, you know, now with the company the size that it is, and then having military experience from my past, it's interesting to me how leaders and managers, how they differentiate each other between the two. And I do believe this, which is the Army or the armed services. We create the best leaders, I think, out there. I think there's the anomaly circumstance where you'll have visionary leaders that I think plug in corporate world, and some of the other places where you're like, yeah, Elon Musk is a visionary and he's a leader, but I don't know. I've never worked for him. I'm envisioning that. But I think by and large, the system that we've created in the military and the tradition and what we've learned through, you know, multiple conflicts and, you know, multiple administrations and conflicts and all of these different things, the emphasis on leadership to me is the military is the last place in our society where we have a primary focus on leadership. Is there a course? And I don't even know if Harvard teaches leadership anymore.
They try. I mean, there's these week-long, you know, there's the Thayer Institute, which tries to impart West Point leadership techniques and procedures, and I'm not saying
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, I was at it's the Thayer Institute. I was actually
is it like where they used to sit down and eat first and do stuff like that, like West Point. It's like, leaders eat first. Get out of my way, motherfucker.
Okay, I'm putting back that bag of Doritos. I'm so sorry. I agree with you. I do, but I would also say that, you know, I have a unique perspective on leadership, right? As a private going through, and as an NCO, and then as a warrant, because there's leadership responsibilities there as on your crew. right? Is your aircraft commander, pilot in command, things like that.
Look at
It's
that.
different.
Right.
And then, commanding thousands of people as a general officer, which,
Right.
you are, but you're a critical piece of that pie, but you're only a piece of it. But when I got out, it was different. I mean, people think in the military, you order people to do something, they all do that. And I'm quick to tell people, that's not the way it works.
Yeah. How do you break this down in how do you define it for yourself, or how have you thought about this, the differences between leadership and management in the military and then transitioning into civilian life? And you have a lot of thoughts on this. So please take as much time as you need as far as the leadership, management, being in command. What are the roles and responsibilities? What are you trying to do, especially as a general? And I kind of need this painted in a way in maybe multiple phases as you answer this, because you have different responsibilities associated with command positions throughout your entire career. And then as you get into being a general, which is more, to me, it seems to be more political in some ways.
Strategic, yeah.
Strategic or political.
But yeah, some of them are political, yeah, definitely.
So could you outline that for us?
Well, let me start in big strokes first.
Please.
So my particular leadership style was definitely influenced about my time as an NCO. I'm not saying that I didn't hold people accountable, and you have to. But my experiences as a junior Marine, as a young Marine, and as a junior warrant officer in the Army and a soldier, that all of those experiences stayed with me and contributed to my leadership philosophy and style. So I always had it in my mind, okay, even when I was a 2-star, the decisions that I'm making, how are they, going to be interpreted? And how are they going to impact those in their rank and file? That doesn't mean that it's still not the right decision, but it goes into my calculus, right? And so I would tell you that it would, leadership is a learned skill. Anybody that tells you that there's just only natural leaders, in my opinion, is off the mark. That it is learned. And every time I think that I've gotten to a level of proficiency where maybe I'm good to go, I get humbled and realize, and taking a nonprofit is a perfect example of that. But, I would say that leadership by example is one of the key fundamentals. And, people say lead from the front, but I always took exception to that. And I don't mean that I haven't led from the front, but I'm not going to, am I the best guy to be in the lead aircraft wiggling the sticks as a colonel rather than a warrant officer? The answer to that is no, I'm not. I'm not as proficient. So should I be in the jump seat and making the right decisions? Which, when the operating day where Matt Waters lost his leg, I referenced, I was in the jump seat, right where I should have been. So leadership by example. The other thing is skill sets as leaders change and I'll give you, when you can do direct leadership, when I was a sergeant in the Marine Corps, I directly communicated with everyone in my sphere of control. Everyone that was in my unit, I could communicate my intent with them. That's not the case when I was a regimental commander. And I'll just paint the picture. So I'm the regimental commander in Fort Campbell. I got two operational battalions in Fort Campbell. I got a training battalion in Fort Campbell. I've got R&D folks there. I got a battalion in Savannah, Georgia, and I got a battalion in Fort Lewis, Washington, JBLM. And I got guys in Iraq and Afghanistan and frequently all over the world in South America.
HOA and
so how do you communicate with those guys? How do you get your intent from here through various levels of bureaucracy? Right. Because not everybody in that bureaucracy buys into your vision.
Right.
And all it takes is one node. And wherever you see a bad leader, by the way, it seems like everything downstream of that is bad. So my particular thing was I would do, and a good friend of mine, Carl Myers, the one who warrant, talked to me about this. And he said, hey, just get out and walk around. So I'd block 2 hours a week just to walk around. And I'd sit down and I didn't talk to pilots all the time. Rarely, actually. I wanted to talk to maintainers and people that I wouldn't see in my operational responsibilities, the guys tweaking engines and doing stuff like that. And I'll tell you a story real quick, if you'll indulge me.
Please.
So I'm sitting down with these engine guys, and they got their bore scopes, and they're looking at turbine blades and all that stuff. And they're a critical part of us generating combat power, right?
Right.
With these airplanes, these engines got to be inspected, put back on the aircraft, and go right back to combat. And I was talking to this young kid, and I said, hey, is there, what can I do to make the regiment better? What would make life easier for you? You tell me. And this one kid, he said, hey, sir, I score a 300 on my APFT, but I got to get up and run at this, 9-minute mile pace with these people with the lowest common denominator for PT, and it doesn't help me. It doesn't help my fitness level. It just means I got to do something extra. Why don't we have an incentive PT program? And I said, hey, you know what? That's a good question. So I went right back to my office, hacked out a note to the first sergeants and the CSM and said, hey, do we have an incentive PT program? And if not, why not? What are your concerns? And I said, I want an answer today.
Right.
And so they, 5 of the 6 first sergeants came back and said, we don't have one. We've been in combat. We just haven't thought of it.
Right.
One of them wrote back, I'll never forget, and he knows who he is. He said, hey, sir, if we do that soldier's going to be in his rack sleeping while the rest of us are out doing PT. And I said, if he gets a 300 on his APFT, I don't care if he's curled up in the rack with a bag of Doritos and some Twinkies. It's working for him.
Yeah.
Right.
So, I quickly put together a memo and established a battalion incentive PT program and walked right back down to that troop and said, hey, you asked me about an incentive PT program. Here is the new battalion policy on an incentive PT program.
This kid's fucking mind.
And he said, he was shell shocked. And I said, hey, effective immediately. Here's the plan. And you think about it. Yeah. It wasn't just that kid I was trying to impact, right? It was everybody. And a great example is that 3 months later or 6 months later, I'm hopping on a C-17 going over to Iraq. And this NCO comes up to me and he says, hey, sir, you got a sec? I said, sure. And he said, and I can't remember, I'll be honest, I can't remember the kid's name, but hey, Specialist Jones is still crowing about how he changed battalion policy. I said, he did change battalion policy, and to me, just to know that they're heard and that they have a voice, you get a better command. Yeah. So I'm a big believer in that. I will tell you quickly, and I believe you got to empower people.
Yeah.
And sometimes empowering people means you take an ass chewing.
Yeah.
Because you accept less than a perfect plan. And to empower leaders means that you cede some control and that periodically they're going to make mistakes. And I tell guys, hey, listen, if you make a mistake and you're trying to do the right thing, we're going to AAR the shit out of it. Okay. But it's going to be in a constructive manner, not in a punitive manner.
Right.
That we're gonna get better from it. And I get it. If you're, if you polish off a 12-pack and crash a 60 flying your wife, when you're not supposed to, okay, that's different.
Right.
But if you're pushing the envelope because you think it's the right thing to do to support that ground force commander, and by the way, I don't care if it's an E4 or an 06, doesn't matter to me. They're still the ground force commander. Then we're just, we're going to learn from it. Even if you make a mistake, it's still a valuable piece. When I got out, and I only had 16 people in our foundation, completely different leadership, right? Because you don't have, and it's not that everybody followed my orders, everything I said when I was in the military, but you had a similar culture and a similar ethos and a common lexicon. It's not that way out there. So I continue to learn every single day, but the basics still apply. I still get a cup of coffee every morning, Black Rifle coffee. I walk through my office and I chat with every single person, and I benefit from those discussions just as much as they do. And I do it every day.
Yeah, it's interesting because one of the things I really like about Salt Lake, for instance, and it's, I don't know if it's something that I picked up along the way from, good commanders and good leaders. I'm not sure, but
did you actually have an officer that you respected?
Yeah.
Okay.
Fortunately,
Was he an aviator?
But I've run into several good officers. I think they need to take it on the chin a little bit more, right? They've got to, if nobody else is out there bringing them down a couple pegs, at least if they listen to this, they're like, fuck. I better be good to my dudes.
So that applies to retired officers as well?
Yeah. They need it, man.
I know. I'm much better for it.
They start smelling their own farts and thinking they're so fucking good. After a while, like guys need a reality, a big dose of reality. You know, that's when they run off the rails and start banging their biographers down range and doing weird ass shit. They need a reality check.
Just for the record, in case my wife's listening, he's not referring to me. I don't have a biographer.
Yeah, you did.
I think everybody's well aware.
Everybody's well aware as to
take a
what
60 while drunk with their wife.
Is that a real story?
It didn't happen within the 160th, but it did happen on a JTF 6 mission.
Are you kidding me?
2 warrants. I don't know that they were drinking, but their wives were down. They were supporting counter narcotic stuff.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they took their wives, and the aircraft crash killed both their wives.
Oh, wow.
Oh my God.
They only killed the wives?
Yeah, which, I mean, I would have wished I would have died and all that.
This is suspect.
They survived.
I mean, what had happened is the aircraft had been on a maintenance test flight. There's that stabulator in the back on a Black Hawk that cycles up and down based on airspeed. And it had been malfunctioning. They thought it was fixed, but it wasn't.
Oh,
and
man.
the thing just nose tucked.
Oh,
and frankly,
wow.
both of them had kids.
Oh,
So just think about it. And the Army actually made a really good call. They were clearly at fault, but they didn't prosecute them because they didn't want to take the fathers from those kids.
Right.
But they did. I mean, they were out.
Punished
but
already.
I thought that was a sense of humanity there that they showed, the chain of command show, which I appreciate. I mean, clearly they were jacked up. And
I guess the Army might be a little better at the Navy when it comes to prosecuting, fake criminals.
I wanted to go back to something. We had talked about the warrants and the traffic sign. So on one of my walkabouts, we had in B Company, which was the AH-6 company, which they refer to as, quote, the center of the universe, unquote. And Gary Linfoot, by the way, was on the shoot, was one of those guys. We had they called it grandfather row. We had like 5 of them, these warrants, W4s, W5s that were all grandfathers. And so I asked them, walking around, I said the same question. Hey, how can I make, what can I do to make us better today? What can I do to help the regiment? Right. And this W5, said to me, well, you can fix the parking situation. We had a parking issue with the amount of parking spots. And I said, all right, I'll take care of that. So I walked out of there and I had a driver and I said, hey, call DPW on base and see if I can get a sign made that is MH6 grandfather parking only, right? And they wouldn't do it, so it cost me $60. I had to go out in town and buy the sign, but just the comic value was worth it. So, of course, you never get a warrant officer in before like 9 o'clock in the morning. Right. So the next morning, I had the sign made out in town, put it right in front of the company, and it was MH6 grandfather parking only. And then the crew chiefs got on board and painted the lines blue on each side of the, and I mean, it was a huge hit down there. I mean, I said, actually, I got warrant officers showing up early for work, jonesing for that parking spot, I probably should be proud of several different things as my time as a regiment commander, but the sign ranks right up there at the top of my significant accomplishments. So it was fun, a lot of fun.
That was great. So we're now you're running Special Operations Warrior Foundation, and
what's the mission?
Yeah, where can
so twofold. It's in it. First we do immediate financial support to severely wounded, injured, or ill special ops personnel, not just operators, but anybody. And not just combat, but if they're, and severely is defined as hospitalization.
Got it.
Right? And not just going into the ER on a through and through and getting sewn up in RTD, right? It's, you got to be admitted. And and so we overnight them a $5K check. well, we ensure that they get 5K.
Mhm.
Right.
So for a Green Beret, if that happens to a Green Beret, the Green Beret Foundation provides $2,500. We provide $2,500.
Got it.
For Air Force Special Ops Command, they don't provide, their foundations don't provide anything. So we do the whole 5K. Night Stalkers, we
What's
do
the
the
deal,
same
Jerry?
way.
I don't know. Too small, I guess, maybe.
Well, if you're working for SOCOM, even if it's an OPCON or a TACON relationship, they're covered.
Yeah.
So we
Got
do that, and we also send a thing called an Echo Show, which is an Alexa-like device video,
Yeah.
so they can communicate with their loved one.
Oh,
which
that's
nice.
cool.
yeah, we get a lot of positive feedback
That's a
on
good
that,
idea.
especially with COVID, because
Yeah.
they can't go visit them.
Right.
Right.
So they can stream videos or
Right.
whatever. But and I've gotten a lot of feedback from the
Yeah.
guys on that. So that's one of our missions, and we I think this year we've had over 40 wounded already
Wow.
and injured or ill. So if they have cancer,
Right.
anything that puts an undue strain on the family, then we
Right.
take, and we overnight that check. I mean, our internal standard is measured in hours to get it out the door.
Right.
So that's one mission. But our main effort, what takes the majority of our time, is our education of the children of fallen special ops personnel and those, again, that are working for
Right.
special ops personnel. And I'll also lump in Medal of Honor recipients, special ops Medal of Honor recipients, living or deceased. Obviously, deceased are going to be covered, but the living as well. So Leroy Petrie,
Yeah.
Tom Payne, who just got his Medal of Honor a couple of weeks ago, Ed Byers, their kids are covered by us. The unique thing about our foundation is that we start in preschool. It's not a college. People default to it's a college scholarship thing. That's a big part of what we do, but not
Right.
nearly all. So we have a holistic approach. So and there's statistical evidence to support this, that a quality preschool that gives these kids a jump start on their
Yeah.
education is very important. So we pay up to $8K per year per child to go to preschool.
Got it.
And we pay from preschool all the way through college graduation. We do unlimited tutoring. Unlimited. And that covers a lot of our special needs kids, and I'll talk about them in a second because we do have a special needs program. So we pay for that. In around 8th grade, we make available to them these mentor programs so kids can determine, and we don't care, by the way, if they go to Harvard or they go to be a hairstylist or an auto mechanic, whatever their passion takes them, we're going to cover it. But we believe that, the mentorship is a key part of this. So we have folks that mentor them and say, okay, hey, what's your passion? What do you want to do? If you're in 8th grade and, 8th grade, I wasn't a strategic thinker. My wife would say I'm still not a strategic thinker, but to have somebody who's not their parents, right? Because your parents don't know anything clearly. My kids remind me of that all the time.
Yeah, right.
But to say, okay, hey, what do you want to be? Well, I want to be a doctor. Okay, well, if you want to be a doctor, here's the things you have to do. AP classes you have to take in high school. This is the things you need to do to reach that dream.
Right.
And so that's a critical piece. We pay for all their college visits, them and a guardian. We bring about 25 to 30 kids to Tampa every year, where they live in the University of Tampa dorms over the summer, and it's a college prep course. They have mentors that are our Gold Star kids that are graduates from the program who volunteer to come back, and they stay in the dorms with them, and it's very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. And we do some team building things, but we teach them financial management. We teach them time management, study skills. We help them write their essays for their applications to college.
Mhm.
And then, of course, we fully fund their college. We don't ask them to go to a bunch, we don't say, hey, I want you to go to this charity, that charity, then come back to us and we'll pick it up. In fact, we tell them, don't do that. We've got it. We pay for them to do, I'm a big believer in internships. My oldest son is on his second internship with John Deere right now in the Raleigh area.
Right.
And I believe that is just essential life skills, showing up to work and doing all the things that like adults do.
Yeah.
And so we pay a stipend for them to do internships. In fact, one of our partners in that is Overstock in Salt Lake City.
Mhm.
And so, but we don't want them to be limited. We don't want to say, I can't afford to move to Salt Lake City for the summer. So we pay $5K for them to do that, just to get them situated. And the same thing with study abroad. We think those are critical experiences for them. And we also help transition them to a career. So it really is a soup to nuts kind of approach. And I will say that our college attendance rates are upwards of 20% above the national average, and our college graduation rates are upwards of 30% above the national average, which is significant, especially if you consider the fact that these kids are most likely in single-parent homes, and that they've had a traumatic loss in their family.
Right.
And I don't take any credit for that success. It really is our counselors, over a third of our staff, that's all they do.
Right.
Is work with these kids. And we recently stood up a special needs program. And I'll give you an example of that. We have a young man, a young boy who's autistic. His father was in 19th Group, was killed in combat. And when COVID hit, he couldn't go to school anymore.
Right.
And, a sense of normalcy and change is difficult for autistic children and for most people, but for them especially. So I have a lot of latitude on what I approve for that program. So from the board, and I asked for that. So we transformed his basement into a classroom, and we paid for the tutor to go to class. So his mother sent me a picture of him walking out the door, his front door with his backpack on. He walks out on the sidewalk and basically boxes around and comes into his classroom in the basement.
That's really cool.
So,
and with her being a full-time student herself, that's huge.
Yes.
Yep.
And again, there's no limit on the tutoring, right? So we can address that. And I'm committed to providing the same level of resources, at least the same level of resources for our special needs kids as I am for our kids that are going a traditional path, right? So, I mean, that's our missions. We just, in fact, 2 days ago, if you're familiar with Charity Navigator, it's a watchdog group for charities. So the highest rating you can get is a 4-star rating on Charity Navigator. 2 days ago, we just got notified with 15, this is our 15th year of a 4-star rating on Charity Navigator. So stewardship of the resources that were provided. In fact, our 3 core values are integrity, stewardship, and commitment. And the need is clear. I mean, we're over 50 kids this year, 53 kids. Last year we were 80 new kids added. We have a total right now of just under 900 kids in our program. Some of them are a few months old. Dustin Ard, NCO in 3rd Group, was killed in August last year. His son, Dustin Gabriel Ard, was born January 4th of 2020. Right. And our counselors, they came in and said, hey, graduation class of 2043. And that's our commitment. Every time we lose someone, if they somebody like Dustin, our finish line is extended out, whatever the end. We make a promise. Hey, we're going to cover you for that. So anyway, bottom line is that's what we do. I love the job. And frankly, I didn't plan on getting into a nonprofit. It wasn't on my radar. In fact, the first job I was a finalist for was to be the president of the Citadel. Yeah. Just because I'm a big believer in leader development, and I thought that would be a great job. And I read every Pat Conroy book out there in preparation for it. He's a Citadel guy. But this job is wonderful. It's a job, and you got to make hard decisions, and you got to do things. But we are defaulted to yes. I'm spring-loaded to yes on making it happen for families, and I go home with a smile on my face every day. It's a great job.
Thank you for explaining that, because we get hit up constantly about good quality charities that are devoted to the cause, where your dollar is going to what it is. And
don't take my word for it. All of our financial documents, everything, our specialops.org, everything's posted.
Well, I don't need to. I have a couple of the kids in the program. In my own command. So,
and if you're working for SOCOM, like Brent Taylor, who is close to home in Utah, North Ogden, I mean, he was working for the 75th Rangers, and his kids when he was shot and killed in Afghanistan a couple years ago. So it's a great foundation. It was started in Eagle Claw with the intent of funding the education. When I told you we lost those 8 Americans at Desert One that left behind 17 kids, that was the original mission. The folks on that mission passed the hat. That was how it started. Wow. And Ross Perot provided seed money. In fact, his grandson, Hilpero, is on our board.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well,
It's very cool. I mean, we found old documents from where they helped us in the early years.
Right.
It's very cool.
Man.
Well, do you take on special needs business partners as projects?
Special needs business
Why do I feel like you're looking at me right now?
I'm just saying, like, do you do leadership development
Well,
for special
limited.
needs business partners?
You know, to go back to Star Trek, I'm not a miracle worker.
Oh, come on. I'm getting it from both ends now.
Dude, cry me a river. I got Mr. Irreverent over here sitting to my right.
We have regular conversations.
Hey, listen, I'm willing to take this project on.
Yeah. Good.
It's going to cost you some coffee.
Like, I feel like we're going to need to,
in the general. It's a new show.
Yeah. It's just like some
new buddy cop show.
Clay and Jared traveling the United States together. That shit would be hilarious, by the way. Like, let's see what kind of shenanigans Jared's gonna get Clay in today.
With Zach
my wife would be really on board with that.
Oh yeah. Holy shit. I would watch every episode.
I would watch it over and over and over again, even though I was part of it.
You probably have PTSD from it. I don't know if you want to trigger event.
God. We used to have this idea, Clay, which we thought was fucking hilarious, but where we have these back in the early days when we were kind of really getting things moving with the company, we'd always bump into these guys that were so
unique,
messed up.
Yeah, both.
They like my grandpa used to have this saying. He'd say you could fuck up a steel ball with a rubber hammer in a plowed field. Like these guys.
Okay, it's going to take me a second to process that one. But
these guys were so messed up. And so we wanted to do this reality show where
you don't think you've ever heard this. We laughed about this for
laughed about this for hours, like days, weeks. Like this has come back and back and back because we were like,
we had two that were very polar opposite.
Now, when you say these guys are screwed, they part of Black Rifle?
No, they were out.
Friends.
They were like
friends.
You know, friends of friends and stuff.
They're still friends. I mean, you're sort of publicly throwing them under the bus.
Nobody knows them by name, so we'll just
they're just
and they don't even know who they are.
They're independently just
nobody knows Jared by name.
Whacked out of their minds.
No, they're just they make the worst decisions ever. They're the guys that are like. They were the guys that their leadership challenges back in the day in their whatever unit because they're like, guys, I'm getting married. And it's like, dude, you're already married. You can't get married again. It's illegal. What? I already did it. No, it's illegal. You can't do it. And so the cool thing is she comes with like a 25% interest only loan on this Maserati, man. You know, like it's like, dude, you're an idiot. You're an idiot. Like they're not bad guys. They're just
not
really, really fucked up.
But
yeah.
We were gonna pull both of them in and say that we were giving them $100,000
to start a new business.
6 months to start a new business. And we don't want, don't tell us now.
Don't tell us now.
You guys are just going to get this money once you make the plan.
And in 6 months, we want to see how much money you've made. And then, but really the show is, we want to see how long it takes them to just lose it all. And we want to see
what is this, like Lotto or something?
It was we were funding a reality show.
We wanted to fund this reality show. It's like, you're getting $100,000 for your new startup idea. And it's like, what startup idea, guys? Exactly.
Oh, we'll see you guys later.
Come on.
Should I be standing by for a check then?
Called Shark Tank.
Yeah, Shark Tank.
That would actually be very funny. I strongly encourage you to continue down that path.
If we only had the $100,000 that we could just watch go up and
there
just
is a downside.
Fire, like when we get to that point, when you guys see the show launched called Shark Tank,
just tanked
with Jared and I, we're not interested in your business idea. We're interested in your personal life. How is it looking right now?
Oh God, I can't wait. This next year, 2021, I will produce an episodic show just for your entertainment.
I would love that. Where can they find your organization, Clay?
So our website is, Special Ops,
Okay.
OPS, specialops.org.
Great.
And if you got a question, you can drop us a line right there. And I'll just, I realize there's a lot of great charities out there, and there's a lot of great people doing great work. Black Rifle, what you did for our disabled vets a couple months ago, which I was honored to observe and to drive around with Evan and Jared and Tyr on. Those are all examples of great things that are happening. This is our mission. This is what we're doing. We believe in it. And if you want to support it, we'd be grateful for it.
Heck yeah.
And I'll just throw this out there for Black Rifle Coffee fans. There will be a Special Operations Warrior Foundation coffee early next year. You can
Heck
look for
that. I love finding stuff like that out. It's pretty good.
Well, you got Gunship Roast,
See, I
so
put
you
it
have
on the
me on the
podcast,
Gunship Roast.
and
I
I can't
love
say
that.
no.
The new gunship,
And then-
the new gunship design is way better.
We got to
Well, and
get
I
you
got
Gothic
to
Serpent
correct
too.
you. You got an MD 500 with a squared off nose on the bag. So I was like, okay, we got to get you a rounded nose on.
The new design is epic.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
I'll show it to you.
And Keurig, just one request.
Please.
The Keurigs, if you got,
Yeah, we got Keurigs coming out on gunship too.
So I got it when I first ordered, was on the website, and I can't even remember how I found out about you guys, but I saw this calf, right? So I'm like, oh, calf. Well, I'd order sort of a selection of the Keurig, and my kids were still, two of my kids that weren't in college yet. I didn't understand what calf stood for. So my wife, this box comes, and I'm at work, and she's
caffeine.
like, really caffeinated as fuck? That's the coffee you ordered? Good job, Dad.
Good
And I
job,
was like,
Dad.
I didn't know what it was.
I know. I dropped the profanity at the end. It used to have the words caffeinated as fuck on it. And
I was like, can they do that?
I got a series of emails. This was after I had my
Fox
first
News
kid.
thing.
No, my first kid. It was Nara, because I got an email from a pastor, and I was still answering a lot of the emails back then. So I was answering all our customer service emails, and I'm like listening to people complain. They're like, I love the coffee. Please take the profanity off. Like when it was regular people just complaining about the profanity, I was like, I don't give a shit, dude. Don't buy the coffee. Buy a different one. Then this pastor emailed me. He's like, man, I use calf all the time. I can't have it on the counter.
Well, I can see the conflict there.
And there are a couple hundred people in the church. I have to, dump this into a different container and then serve it. It's my favorite coffee. And then maybe a few days later, I got another one. I was like, man, I drink coffee all the time. I got 2 little kids. I can't have, profanity on my countertop. And I was like, shit, I have a daughter that's going to be reading pretty soon. I can't either. And that's when I was like, I got to take it off, because if I can't have my own product on my kitchen counter, there's a problem. And it had nothing to do with Fox News. I don't know if you know, but I don't really give a shit most days about.
No, I just thought that's when we got an abundance of outside
No,
customers.
I loved that. Because they were just, weirdo people complaining about profanity just in general. But when you articulate it and such, like,
Right.
hey, my kids, and I'm like, wait, you're right. I have kids too.
You can't wear outdoor magic either.
My favorite design we've ever made is Outdoor Magic, which is a unicorn raping an elk with a salmon stuck to its horn.
To be fair, we
Wait,
don't
wait,
know
wait,
about
wait,
the
what?
consent.
Yeah, we're
don't know
unsure about the
unicorn raping
consent.
an elk with a salmon stuck
sex.
to
They
its
were
horn?
having sex. Yeah, so
Yes.
it's a unicorn having sex with an elk with a salmon stuck on the unicorn's horn.
And I walked into a hotel in Nashville,
yeah,
and a guy was wearing that shirt.
yeah, I see it all the time. People love that. People love the shirt. It's the first design we ever did together.
It was
That's
on
what
your
we were.
Porsche of Park
That's
City.
what we were coming up with our first design, because it was my first design I came up with, because I was talking to my buddy Tage
on your porch
about.
in Park
No, I
City.
was talking to my
you've
buddy.
had it,
Yeah, I've had it forever.
but that was when I called and had the artist draw it.
I was at the embassy in Kabul. My buddy was a SEAL sitting next to me, and he's a Goliath of a human being. And all these case officers were around us. And these guys were like pleated front docker, penny loafer, D-bag case officers. They were cocktail circuit case officers, and not like real case officers.
Definitely would have been officers.
And yeah, they were former officers, 1,000%. And
sitting right here, bro. Sitting right here.
And I was like, hey, if you want to go elk hunting, I want to take you. When I was talking to my buddy Tage, I'm like, have you ever killed like a big game animal? And he's like, nah, but I've killed a fuck ton of people. And all the case officers with like pleated front dockers, they all kind of simultaneously picked up their food and left at the same time because they're like, no, but I've killed a fuck ton of people. And he had at that point, right? He's not one to kind of, he's not prone to
he's still
hyperbole.
stacking the list still.
But that's where I came up for this. I came up with this design because we were going on this trip together, and I was like, dude, we should make t-shirts for this trip. This will be super fun. And it was going to be called, originally it was Cast and Blast.
Well, it's gone fishing.
Yeah, it was gone fishing, catch and full release.
Catch and full release.
This is just like he and I making stupid shirts for our trip. Sorry,
Catch and violate and release.
Anyway, hey, thanks for being here, Clay. We appreciate it.
This was amazing.
Donate. If you get the opportunity to donate, we're going to have a roundup too in Black Rifle Coffee eventually for different charities. You guys will be one that we'll have in that roundup circumstance.
If it's not on there today, it will be by the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, great.
No, thanks.
So,
appreciate the opportunity, gents.
Absolutely.
Good times.
Awesome.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, sir.